When I arrived at my daughter's graduation, my seat was gone. The auditorium was buzzing with applause and camera flashes, parents standing on tiptoe to record every moment. Rows of chairs stretched neatly across the floor, each one tagged with names. I held my invitation tightly, scanning the aisle where my place should have been. There was an empty gap, but no chair for me. It felt like someone had erased my existence with a single motion. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe a staff member had moved it aside. Maybe it was just late being set up. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to believe there was a reasonable explanation. My daughter's big day was too important for me to spiral into suspicion. But then I noticed the people sitting exactly where my chair should have been. My mother-in-law, her pearl necklace gleaming under the stage lights, and my sister-in-law, smiling faintly as if nothing was wrong. My name tag was missing. They sat comfortably, knees crossed, handbags tucked neatly under their seats, like the space had always belonged to them. Family only, my mother-in-law said when I approached. Her voice was smooth but sharp enough to cut. She didn't even look directly at me, just tilted her head slightly toward the stage, as if I were an intruder interrupting a sacred ceremony. For a moment, my legs froze. My daughter had worked for years for this moment. I had been there through every late-night study session, every breakdown over essays and exams, every tear shed over pressure that never seemed to ease. I wanted nothing more than to see her walk across that stage, to clap until my hands hurt, to stand tall as her mother. And yet here I was, told without words that my presence was optional, disposable. I smiled. That smile wasn't joy. It was survival, the kind of smile that masks fury until it finds the right outlet. I clutched the invitation tighter, the embossed lettering pressing into my palm like a reminder. I belonged here, whether they liked it or not. I didn't sit down. I didn't argue. Instead, I stood quietly in the aisle, scanning the room, waiting. And when the ushers opened a section reserved for late arrivals, I moved toward the front row. The row reserved for sponsors, for people who had donated to the school's scholarship fund. A row no one expected me to step into. I slid into a seat and kept my chin high. That was the moment I felt dozens of eyes on me. Not because I made a scene, but because I refused to disappear. But before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to the hours leading up to this moment. The morning of the graduation had been full of hope. My daughter, Emily, had woken up before her alarm, bouncing with excitement. She tried on her cap and gown in front of the mirror at least twice, adjusting the tassel so it would fall just right. I helped pin her honor cords neatly across her shoulders, smoothing out wrinkles in her robe. She was glowing, a mixture of pride and nerves. "Do you think Grandma will clap for me?" she asked softly while fussing with her hair. "Of course," I told her. I didn't add the truth. That her grandmother clapped for appearances, not love. That her grandmother never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was never enough. But Emily didn't need that weight on her day. I kissed her cheek and told her she looked perfect. Driving to the campus, I had that uneasy feeling in my chest. A gnawing sense that something was off. It wasn't the traffic or the crowded parking lots. It was quieter than that, like the hush before a storm. I brushed it off, reminding myself that today wasn't about me. It was about Emily. She deserved joy untainted by old family battles. Still, memories crept in while I walked across the parking lot. Last Christmas, when my chair at the dinner table was mysteriously forgotten. The year before, when Emily's birthday cake was cut and served without saving us a slice. The endless little reminders that I was tolerated, not welcomed. My mother-in-law's favorite line echoed in my head. "We just do what's best for the family." A phrase that always meant excluding me. By the time I reached the auditorium, I tried to shake those memories away. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was paranoid. But when I saw the missing seat, the smile on my mother-in-law's lips, and the way she shifted slightly to block me, I knew my instincts had been right all along. I didn't shout. I didn't demand they move. I stood there, heart pounding, thinking, if I fought right then, it would become my daughter's memory too. She would look back on her graduation day and remember her mother arguing in the aisle. I refused to give them that satisfaction. So I stayed calm. I scanned the room until I saw the empty row near the front. Parents whispered as I walked past. A few raised their eyebrows, surprised. One mother gave me the tiniest nod, a flicker of solidarity. I sat down, smoothed my dress, and lifted my chin. From that vantage point, I could see Emily on stage, waiting with her classmates. She spotted me, her eyes lighting up when she saw where I sat today. She smiled, relief flooding her face. And in that instant, I knew I had made the right choice. I belonged in that moment, not because they gave me a seat, but because I claimed my place without their permission. What I didn't know yet was that this small act would ripple far beyond the ceremony. The whispers would grow louder, the questions sharper, the confrontation unavoidable. But in that moment, as the principal tapped the microphone and the ceremony began, I sat tall and silent, prepared for whatever storm would come next. Here's what I thought would happen. I imagined walking into the auditorium, handing my invitation to an usher, and being guided to my reserved seat. I pictured sitting between family members, my daughter's name proudly printed on the program clutched in my lap. I imagined we would cheer together, cry together, and capture photos that Emily would treasure for the rest of her life. In my mind, it was going to be one of those rare days where all the bitterness was set aside, even if just for a couple of hours. I even practiced how I would smile when my mother-in-law leaned over to whisper something condescending. I told myself I would ignore it for Emily's sake. I thought the day would be about unity, however artificial, because graduation is supposed to be bigger than grudges. I wanted to believe that even the coldest of hearts could soften in the face of a milestone this important. But reality didn't care about my carefully rehearsed fantasies. Reality was seeing my name tag vanish as if it had never existed. Reality was hearing the words, "family only," spoken directly to my face, like a verdict. Reality was the sharp twist in my chest when I realized they had planned this. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mix-up. It was deliberate. The auditorium smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh flowers. Balloons in the school colors floated near the stage. Parents wore their best clothes, some even carrying bouquets for their children. I should have felt joy. Instead, I felt like an outsider peeking through glass. My mother-in-law sat with perfect posture, her pearls shining like she was the queen of the evening. My sister-in-law leaned close to her, whispering something behind her hand. Both glanced at me with that same look I had seen countless times, a look that measured me and decided I was lacking. I remembered the first time I felt it. Emily was 6 years old, and we had gone to her grandmother's house for Christmas. Emily was so excited to show the family a drawing she had made at school. She stood in the living room, holding the paper in both hands, waiting for someone to notice. My mother-in-law glanced at it, muttered, "That's nice, dear," and then immediately turned to praise her other granddaughter's store-bought craft kit. Emily folded her picture quietly and slipped it into my purse. I pretended not to see the disappointment on her face, but I felt it like a stone. Then there was her 8th birthday. I had spent days preparing a cake with her favorite colors, purple and silver. When we arrived at the party, my mother-in-law unveiled a second cake she had ordered, one decorated in pink and gold for her other grandchild. She insisted both cakes be presented at the same time, as if Emily's moment was too much to bear on its own. I still remember Emily's forced smile in the photos, her eyes dimmer than the candles she blew out. Those memories came rushing back as I stood in that graduation aisle. Each one layered itself over the present moment, reminding me that exclusion had always been part of the plan. It wasn't about logistics. It was about power. They wanted me to feel small. They wanted Emily to believe her mother was insignificant. And yet, there was Emily on stage, her eyes scanning the crowd. When she spotted me moving toward the front row, she smiled. It was a smile filled with relief, like she had been holding her breath, afraid I wouldn't make it. That look from her was everything. It told me that no matter how they tried to erase me, I was still her anchor. Still, I couldn't shake the humiliation. I sat in the sponsor section, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Around me, other parents chatted happily, comparing stories about their children's college plans. They had no idea about the quiet war unfolding, just a few rows behind them. To anyone else, I was just another proud parent. Only, I knew the weight pressing down on my chest. My mind replayed the conversation from the night before. My husband had said, "Don't expect too much." He looked uneasy as he adjusted his tie. "You know how Mom can be." I wanted to believe he was exaggerating. I wanted to believe she wouldn't dare sabotage something as sacred as a graduation, but deep down, I had known. His warning wasn't paranoia. It was experience. The speeches began. The principal spoke about perseverance and resilience. Each word felt aimed at me, though he didn't know it. Perseverance. Resilience. Words I had lived by for years, just to survive in this family. Then the choir sang, and I felt tears sting my eyes, not from pride, but from the bitterness of it all. I forced myself to focus on Emily. I imagined her walking across that stage, shaking hands, holding her diploma high. That vision steadied me. I reminded myself that my seat didn't define me. My presence did. Still, the ache of being erased lingered like a bruise. As the ceremony continued, I noticed subtle glances from others. A teacher who knew me nodded gently, as if to say she saw what was happening. A stranger behind me whispered to her husband, "That poor woman." Their pity burned almost as much as the insult itself. I thought about leaving, about walking out to protect my pride. But then, Emily caught my eye again from the stage. She mouthed the words, "Thank you," as if she could feel my silent support. That was when I knew I couldn't go. No matter how much it hurt, I had to stay. For her. For the memory she would carry of this day. The auditorium lights dimmed slightly as the first names were called. Cheers erupted, balloons bounced, and families waved signs from the back. I gripped the arms of my chair, steadying myself. I told myself that no matter what they did, I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. But I also knew something else. This wasn't over. They had tried to erase me in public, and I had found a way to reclaim my place. Yet there would be consequences. My mother-in-law never let anything go. She thrived on control, and I had just slipped out of her grasp. The storm was brewing, and I could feel it even as I clapped for the students ahead of Emily. And so I sat, silent and upright, waiting for the moment my daughter's name would echo across the hall. That moment would be mine too, stolen seat or not. What I didn't expect was how quickly the confrontation would follow, and how much louder it would be than the applause. This was not the first time. The missing seat at Emily's graduation was just another entry in a long catalog of small betrayals and calculated humiliations. Looking back, I can trace the pattern clearly, each slight stitching itself into the fabric of our family story until it was impossible to ignore. One memory stands out vividly. It was Emily's 10th birthday. She had been dreaming of a party at the skating rink, saving pictures from magazines of sparkly decorations and colorful cakes. I worked extra hours, pinching pennies to make it happen. On the day of the party, Emily showed up in her new pink dress, glowing with pride. But the glow dimmed when her grandmother arrived with her other granddaughter in tow, carrying a bigger cake, brighter decorations, and a louder voice. Within minutes, the party had shifted. Guests were told to admire the surprise cake. Emily's original cake was pushed to the side like an afterthought. I saw her small hands clench at her sides, her smile falter. She blew out her candles, but I could see her eyes watering as the crowd cheered for the wrong centerpiece. Another time, Emily won a regional science fair. She had stayed up for weeks building her project, a model that demonstrated renewable energy with spinning turbines and tiny lights. She placed first, and I could not have been prouder. When we brought the trophy to her grandmother's house, I expected some recognition. Instead, my mother-in-law chuckled and said, "That's nice, but you know your cousin got accepted into a private dance academy. That's real talent." Emily's face fell, and she quietly carried the trophy to her room. That night, I found her staring at it, whispering that maybe it wasn't good enough. Even family dinners carried the same undertone. If I cooked, there were comments about how it was different from the way she made it. If Emily wore something I picked, her grandmother would smirk and say it wasn't flattering. At Thanksgiving one year, when everyone gathered for the family photo, I was told to stand at the edge. Later, when the framed picture appeared in her living room, I realized I had been cropped out entirely. My arm was visible on the side, like evidence of a ghost, but my face was gone. Each of these moments chipped away at me. At first, I tried to excuse them. I told myself it was cultural differences, or generational habits, or maybe even my own sensitivity. I thought staying silent was the noble choice, that enduring the slights was better than causing a scene that could ripple into Emily's life. I told myself that I was protecting my daughter by absorbing the cruelty myself. But silence only taught them that they could push further, take more, erase me completely. And they did. I remember one summer barbecue when Emily was about 13. She had been working on a dance routine for weeks, excited to perform for the family. When the music started, she stood nervously on the deck, glancing at me for encouragement. She moved gracefully, her eyes shining with concentration. But halfway through, my sister-in-law interrupted loudly, clapping her hands for her own daughter to show off a new song she had learned. The music was cut, the attention stolen. Emily sat down without finishing, her cheeks burning red. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just held her hand and whispered that she was wonderful. Inside, I felt like breaking something. The pattern was too clear to ignore. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate reshaping of every moment where Emily and I could shine, twisted into something smaller, duller, or forgotten. Why did I stay silent for so long? The answer is tangled. Part of me believed in the myth of family unity, that if I just endured, eventually they would see me differently. Part of me feared that speaking up would isolate Emily even more, turning her into a target alongside me. And another part, the tired part, thought maybe this was simply how things had to be. That survival meant shrinking, not fighting. But over the years, the shrinking became unbearable. My mother-in-law's comments grew sharper. "You should be grateful we include you at all," she once whispered, when we argued about holiday plans. She smiled as she said it, like it was a kindness. The night before graduation, I replayed all of this in my mind. I could not sleep. I remembered the countless times Emily and I sat together after family gatherings, her head on my shoulder, her voice small as she asked why Grandma didn't seem to like us. I told her it wasn't her fault. I told her love could look complicated. But deep down, I wondered if I was lying to both of us. And now, sitting in the sponsor row while my rightful seat was stolen, all those memories fused together. They weren't isolated events. They were steps on a staircase that led right here, to a public ceremony, to my daughter's milestone, to a moment where my erasure was supposed to be complete. I thought about the photos that would circulate after the ceremony. Emily in her cap and gown, her grandmother proudly beside her, while I was somewhere in the shadows. History rewritten in real time. My role erased. My love dismissed. My sacrifice ignored. But something inside me shifted. Watching Emily search the crowd for me and then smile when she found me told me the truth. No matter how much they tried to erase me, Emily knew who had been there. She knew whose hands had steadied hers before every test, whose arms had held her after every disappointment, whose voice had cheered for her even when no one else did. The history of exclusion was heavy, but it was also fuel. Every cropped photo, every stolen birthday, every mocking comment had been teaching me something. That silence was not protection. That endurance was not strength. That being invisible was not the same as keeping peace. And as the ceremony continued, as name after name was called, I realized that this was not just Emily's graduation. It was mine too. A graduation from silence. A final lesson in what happens when you let cruelty write the story of your life. I had spent years shrinking, but not anymore. What I didn't yet know was that the trigger moment was minutes away. A single sentence, spoken casually, would light the fire I had been holding back for years. And when it came, I would no longer smile quietly and step aside. This time, I would not disappear. The principal tapped the microphone, and the auditorium hushed. The stage lights shifted to a brighter white, and the rows of graduates stirred nervously in their seats. Emily sat in the second row, her cap slightly tilted, her cords shining against her gown. I kept my eyes on her, steadying myself with the sight of her shoulders rising and falling in quick breaths. The announcer began reading names, each one punctuated by bursts of cheers. Families shouted, waved banners, and clicked cameras. I clapped politely for every student, but inside, my stomach churned. The stolen seat behind me felt like a shadow pressing on my back. I could hear my mother-in-law's voice, calm and deliberate. Family only. It echoed louder than the applause. Halfway through the ceremony, I rose to adjust my position. My legs needed to stretch, but there was something else. I wanted to see their faces. I turned slightly and caught her watching me. My mother-in-law sat with her pearl necklace glistening, her lips curved into that knowing smile. It was not joy, it was triumph. My sister-in-law leaned toward her, whispered something, and both chuckled quietly. My chest tightened. They thought they had won. The announcer's voice rang again. Emily Rose Parker. The sound of her name filled the auditorium. My heart leapt, and I shot to my feet, clapping as loudly as I could. Emily rose gracefully, her eyes searching the crowd until they landed on me. She smiled, a smile so wide, it lit the stage more than any spotlight. I wanted to freeze that moment forever. My daughter walking tall, diploma in hand, her head high. But then, over the roar of applause, I heard it. My mother-in-law's voice, sharp and cutting, carrying further than she probably realized. She doesn't even belong in the picture. It was not meant for me, but it reached me like a blade. My smile faltered for a second. Emily posed with her diploma, cameras flashing, the audience cheering. But in my ear, those words replayed. She doesn't even belong in the picture. My hands trembled as I lowered them, and I felt heat rise to my face. The graduates began returning to their seats, the applause fading into murmurs. I sat down slowly, my pulse racing. My fingers tapped against my knee, restless, furious, searching for release. My mind filled with every photograph I had been cropped out of, every moment they had rewritten without me. This time, it was not just about me. It was about Emily. On her biggest day, her grandmother had tried to erase her mother from the frame of memory. The program shifted to speeches. A valedictorian spoke about perseverance, about family support, about the people who carried them through. Each word twisted inside me like a reminder of what I had given, what I had endured, and how invisible it had been to everyone else. I could not sit still. My body leaned forward, ready to rise. I felt an almost electric pull, a demand from deep inside that I do something. And then, the opportunity came. The school photographer moved toward the front row to prepare for group photos. Families were already lining up near the stage, adjusting ties, fixing hair, ready for their moments. I stood, clutching my invitation like a shield. My steps echoed softly on the polished floor as I moved toward the stage. Behind me, I heard the sharp intake of breath, the unmistakable voice of my mother-in-law. Where does she think she's going? The whisper was loud enough to ripple through the nearby rows. A few parents turned their heads. I kept walking. At the edge of the stage, Emily spotted me. Her smile widened, her eyes shining as she waved me closer. The photographer motioned for parents to gather. My daughter reached out, waiting for me, and that was all the permission I needed. But then came the final blow. My mother-in-law rose from her seat, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she approached. She planted herself just a few steps away from me and hissed, "Step aside. You don't belong in this photo. This is for real family." The words landed like a slap. Around us, the chatter dipped. Parents shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. Emily froze on stage, her hands still raised toward me, her smile trembling into uncertainty. I turned slowly, meeting my mother-in-law's gaze. Her eyes were hard, cold, certain she still held control. For a moment, I considered staying silent, shrinking as I had done 1,000 times before. But something inside me cracked open, something that had been waiting years for release. I lifted the invitation, the embossed school logo catching the light. "I am her mother," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "I belong wherever she island." The room fell into silence, as if the air itself was holding its breath. My mother-in-law's mouth opened, then closed again. She had not expected me to speak. Not here, not now, not in front of witnesses. I stepped onto the stage and walked to Emily, taking her hand in mine. The warmth of her fingers steadied me. Together, we faced the photographer. Flashbulbs popped, and I smiled, not for them, not for my mother-in-law, but for my daughter, for the record that could never again be rewritten without me. The applause resumed, tentative at first, then stronger. A teacher near the front clapped louder, breaking the tension. Other parents joined in. My mother-in-law remained standing, her face red with fury, her hands trembling around her clutch. She sat down heavily, defeated for the moment, but I knew this was far from over. As the ceremony ended, and families began to gather their belongings, whispers followed me. Some were sympathetic, some curious, some judgmental. I ignored them all. Emily squeezed my hand, leaning close. "I'm glad you came up," she whispered. "I wanted you there." Her words wrapped around me like armor. It no longer mattered what my mother-in-law thought, or what she had tried to do. The photographs would show the truth. Emily and her mother, together, unbroken, present. But I also knew that this public defiance had shifted something permanently. The storm would not fade quietly. My mother-in-law would not forget being challenged, being exposed. And though I had won this round, the battle for dignity was just beginning. That night, as I replayed the ceremony in my mind, I realized something. For years, I had let her decide my place. That day, for the first time, I decided it for myself. And the look on her face told me she knew she had lost something she could never take back. The ceremony ended with a roar of applause, and the flutter of graduation caps tossed high into the air. Emily laughed, her arms full of flowers handed to her by classmates. She was radiant, glowing in a way that only pride and relief can create. I wanted to hold on to that joy for her, but even as I smiled, I could feel the weight of my mother-in-law's glare boring into me from across the room. Parents began gathering near the exits, snapping last-minute photos, herding graduates into hugs and congratulations. I lingered near the stage, letting Emily soak in her moment. My mother-in-law approached, her heels clicking against the polished floor like gunshots. She stopped just short of me, her eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a tight line. "You embarrassed this family," she hissed. Her voice was low but sharp, carrying enough venom to pierce through the background noise. I turned slowly, keeping my face calm. "I stood with my daughter," I replied. "That's not embarrassment. That's love." Her face reddened. "You made a spectacle. People are talking. Let them talk," I said. At least they saw the truth for once. Around us, a few parents paused, their conversations faltering as they caught the tension. My sister-in-law appeared at my mother-in-law's side, eyes darting nervously between us. She whispered, "Mom, not here." But her mother shoved the warning aside. "You've been nothing but trouble since the day you joined this family," my mother-in-law snapped. "Always looking for sympathy. Always acting like a victim. Today, you showed everyone exactly who you are." Something inside me flared. For years, I had swallowed her words, let them slide into my skin without defense. But not now. Not when Emily was watching. "I showed them I'm a mother who refuses to be erased," I said firmly. My voice carried louder than I intended, drawing more eyes our way. "You've spent years trying to push me aside, but today, you failed." The air thickened. My mother-in-law's eyes widened slightly, startled by my defiance in front of witnesses. For once, she didn't have the comfort of shadows. She was exposed, her cruelty visible to everyone within earshot. Emily rushed over then, her cap askew, her face flushed with excitement and worry. "What's going on?" she asked, clutching her diploma to her chest. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart," I said quickly, softening my tone for her. "I'm so proud of you." But my mother-in-law wasn't finished. She leaned closer, her voice dripping with bitterness. "One day, she'll see you for what you really are, and when that day comes, you'll have no one left." Emily's smile faltered. She glanced between us, confusion clouding her expression. I felt fury rise in me again, hotter this time. "She already sees me," I said, my words sharp but steady. I squeezed Emily's hand. She knows exactly who has been there for her. Gasps rippled from the nearby parents. Someone muttered, "Good for her." Another whispered, "Shameful." The line between support and judgment blurred, but I didn't care. For once, I wasn't speaking for them. I was speaking for myself, for Emily, for every time I had been silent. My mother-in-law stepped back, her jaw tight. For a moment, I thought she might strike me with words even sharper, but then she caught sight of the stares around us. She forced a brittle smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Congratulations, Emily," she said, in a tone sweet enough to rot teeth. "We're proud of you." Then she turned sharply, grabbing my sister-in-law's arm and marching toward the exit. Her back was rigid, her steps clipped. The audience parted for her like she was a storm cloud cutting across a sunny sky. Emily let out a shaky breath. "Mom, what just happened?" I stroked her hair gently, careful not to disturb her cap. What happened is that I made sure you'll never look back at this day and wonder where I was. Tears welled in her eyes. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you. I needed you there." That was all that mattered. But the storm wasn't over. Later, outside the auditorium, families gathered for photos under the spring sun. The scent of fresh grass and roses filled the air. Emily posed with her classmates, laughing again, her joy restored. I stayed a few steps back, letting her enjoy her freedom. That was when my husband appeared, his face pale, his tie loosened. "I heard what happened," he said quietly. His eyes flicked nervously toward his mother, who stood near the parking lot, arms crossed, her face twisted in disapproval. "She tried to keep me out of the photo," I told him flatly. He winced. "Why didn't you just let it go?" My chest tightened. "Because it's our daughter's graduation. Because I refuse to disappear for her sake or mine." He rubbed the back of his neck, torn between loyalty and fear. "You don't understand. She'll never forgive this." I laughed bitterly. She never forgave me for existing. So what difference does it make? He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in years I saw a flicker of shame in his eyes. He wanted to argue, but no words came. He turned away, muttering something under his breath, and walked toward his mother. I stood alone for a moment, the noise of celebration swirling around me. But I didn't feel small. I didn't feel erased. For the first time, I felt like I had taken up the space I deserved. Emily returned to my side, her diploma clutched tight. "Ignore them," she said softly. "This is our day." Her words were simple, but they pierced straight through the fog of tension. She was right. It was our day, and no amount of venom from my mother-in-law could take that away. Still, I knew this battle had opened new wounds. There would be consequences at family gatherings, at holidays, at every event where her presence loomed. But something had shifted forever. I was no longer willing to stay silent. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold, I held Emily close for another photo. This time, there was no one to push me aside, no one to erase me from the frame. The flash captured us together, mother and daughter, exactly where we belonged. And for the first time in years, I felt certain that no matter how hard she tried, my mother-in-law could never rewrite this moment. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. A string of messages lit up the screen, each one more pointed than the last. My mother-in-law had wasted no time. "You humiliated us in front of everyone. You should have stayed in your place. Don't expect forgiveness for what you did yesterday." I stared at the words, my stomach twisting, but I refused to reply. For years, I had been pulled into endless cycles of accusation and defense, letting her dictate the rhythm of my life. Not this time. I set the phone face down on the table and poured myself a cup of coffee. The silence that followed felt heavy, but also strangely freeing. By mid-morning, the phone rang again. This time, it was my husband. His voice was low, strained. "Mom's furious. She says you ruined Emily's graduation." I closed my eyes, holding the phone tighter. "I didn't ruin anything. I stood next to our daughter while she held her diploma. That's what she'll remember." He sighed. "You don't understand. Family reputation matters to her. And Emily's happiness matters to me," I shot back. "If she thinks reputation is more important than her granddaughter's moment, then maybe she should rethink what family means." There was a long pause. Finally, he said, "I don't want to argue," and ended the call. The silence after hung heavier than before, but I didn't crumble. I went to the living room, where Emily sat on the couch still in her pajamas, her diploma propped up proudly on the coffee table. She smiled at me sleepily. "I had the best day yesterday," she said. "Not because of the graduation, but because you were there with me." Her words washed over me like sunlight. Whatever storm brewed outside our home, inside we had peace. But the storm did come. Later that week, I heard whispers from relatives. My sister-in-law called Emily to check in, but her questions were laced with poison. "Are you okay after what your mom did? It must have been embarrassing for you." "Oh, dis." Emily handed me the phone, her eyes blazing. "You can talk to her yourself," she said. I took the call and answered firmly. The only embarrassing thing was trying to keep a mother out of her daughter's celebration. My sister-in-law sputtered, then hung up. That was the beginning of a shift I hadn't expected. A few relatives quietly reached out to me afterward, confessing that they had seen what happened and were shocked. One aunt admitted, "We've all known how she treats you, but yesterday was different. She went too far." For the first time, I wasn't standing alone. Still, my mother-in-law doubled down. At Sunday dinner the following week, she announced to everyone that some people don't know how to behave in public. She didn't say my name, but the message was clear. I didn't attend that dinner. Neither did Emily. We went out for pizza instead, laughing over greasy slices, building a new tradition of our own. In the weeks that followed, my relationship with my husband became strained. He wanted to keep peace with his mother, but I was no longer willing to bend. "You're forcing me to choose sides," he said one night, his voice tired. "No," I replied softly. "She's the one forcing you. I'm just refusing to disappear anymore." That truth lingered between us, sharp and undeniable. But alongside the tension came a quiet strength I hadn't felt in years. I began to see that standing up for myself wasn't just about me. It was about showing Emily what it looks like to claim your worth, even when others try to erase it. She needed to see that silence isn't always noble, that sometimes love means speaking louder than the voices that try to drown you out. One afternoon, Emily came into the kitchen, holding a framed photo. It was the official graduation picture, the one with both of us smiling side by side. "I want this in the living room," she said, "so anyone who comes over sees it." I hung it on the wall above the mantel. Every time I walked past, I felt a surge of pride. That image was proof that I belonged. Not because I fought for a chair, but because no one could erase what was already mine. As summer rolled on, I found myself reflecting often. There had been a time when I thought keeping peace meant staying quiet. But now I understood that silence had been a gift to my mother-in-law, a way for her to tighten her grip. The graduation was the breaking point, the moment I finally stepped out of her shadow. The aftermath wasn't easy. There were cold shoulders at family events, whispered gossip, and the constant reminder that I had upset the unspoken rules. But there was also freedom. I no longer twisted myself into knots to earn her approval. I no longer measured my worth by her acceptance. Emily thrived too. She began speaking up more, not just at home, but in her own life. "I learned from you," she said once when she stood up to a teacher who had dismissed her work. That moment meant more to me than any apology I would ever get from her grandmother. Looking back, I realized that the graduation wasn't just Emily's milestone. It was mine too. A graduation from silence, a passage into a new way of living where I claimed my place instead of waiting for permission. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if my mother-in-law ever understood what she had lost that day. By trying to erase me, she had lost her grip on the story. She had exposed herself in front of everyone. And in the process, she gave me the courage to stop shrinking. Now, when I look at the framed photo above the mantel, I smile. I don't see the absence of a chair. I see the presence of something stronger. A bond between mother and daughter that no one can cut out. And maybe, just maybe, I don't know if she realizes yet, but she lost something far greater than a seat at a ceremony. She lost the power to make me feel small.